Hey there, folks! Ever heard of a little story called the Iliad? It's a real humdinger, let me tell you. Penned by the legendary Homer, this epic poem is like the superhero blockbuster of ancient Greece. We're talking gods and monsters, heroes and villains, love and loss, all wrapped up in a neat little package of epic battles and drama that'll make your jaw drop. The Iliad tells the story of the Trojan War, a conflict so legendary they're still talking about it thousands of years later. Picture this. Two sides clashing over a beautiful woman, armies clashing on the plains of Troy, and enough bloodshed to make your hair stand on end. But it ain't just about the fighting, see? At its heart, the Iliad is a story about human nature. Our pride, our rage, our capacity for both great love and terrible violence. It's a story that's as relevant today as it was way back when. So buckle up, folks, because we're about to dive headfirst into the world of the Iliad. Get ready for a wild ride. So, how did this whole Trojan War shebang get started, you ask? Well, grab a seat and let me tell you about a little something called the Judgment of Paris. It all began with a wedding, see? Not just any wedding, mind you, but the wedding of King Peleus, a mortal man, and the sea nymph Thetis. Now, everyone who was anyone was invited to this shindig, except for one little goddess, Eris, the goddess of discord. And boy was she sore about it. Eris decided to stir up some trouble, so she tossed a golden apple into the wedding reception. This wasn't just any apple, though. It was inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." Naturally, all the goddesses present wanted to claim the prize. The competition eventually boiled down to three powerful goddesses: Hera, the queen of the gods; Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare; and Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. They couldn't agree on who was the fairest, so they turned to Zeus to decide. Now, Zeus was no fool. He knew better than to get mixed up in this mess. So he passed the buck to a young Trojan prince named Paris. Little did Paris know, his decision would change the course of history. Each goddess offered him a tempting bribe. Hera promised him power, Athena offered him wisdom in war, and Aphrodite, well, she offered him the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. Let's meet the main players in this epic showdown, shall we? On one side, we got the Greeks, also known as the Achaeans. They sailed all the way to Troy to reclaim Helen and teach those Trojans a lesson they wouldn't forget. Leading the charge was King Agamemnon of Mycenae, Menelaus' brother and the most powerful king in all of Greece. Talk about holding a grudge. But Agamemnon wasn't the only hero in the Greek ranks. Oh no, sir. They had a whole lineup of legendary warriors like the cunning Odysseus, the mighty Ajax the Great, and of course the swiftest, strongest, and most handsome of them all, Achilles. This guy was practically invincible, thanks to his mama, the sea nymph Thetis, who dipped him in the river Styx as a baby. The only catch? His heel was his one weak spot. On the other side, we got the Trojans, holed up in their magnificent city with walls so high they seemed to touch the sky. Leading the Trojan defense was King Priam, an old but respected ruler. But the real star of the Trojan side was Hector, Priam's eldest son and a warrior every bit as skilled and courageous as Achilles. With so many powerful personalities clashing, something's gotta give, and boy did it ever. The Trojan War raged on for 10 long years, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. As the battles raged, tensions started to rise within the Greek camp, especially between their two hottest heads, Agamemnon and Achilles. You see, during one of their raids, Agamemnon took a beautiful young woman named Chryseis as his war prize. Problem was, Chryseis' father was a priest of Apollo, the god of music, poetry, and, oh yeah, plague and pestilence. Talk about bad luck. Apollo was one angry god and decided to punish the Greeks by unleashing a plague upon their army. The Greeks were dropping like flies, and Agamemnon was forced to give Chryseis back to her father. But Agamemnon wasn't going to take this lying down. To compensate himself for his loss, he decided to take Achilles' war prize, a beautiful woman named Briseis. Now, Achilles was prideful, and he didn't appreciate Agamemnon pushing him around. In a fit of rage, he decided to withdraw from the war altogether, taking his loyal Myrmidon warriors with him. This little spat had huge consequences for the Greeks. Without Achilles, their greatest warrior, the tide of the war began to turn in favor of the Trojans. With Achilles sulking in his tent, the Trojans, led by the valiant Hector, pushed the Greeks back to their ships. The situation was looking pretty dire for the Greeks, let me tell you. Meanwhile, Achilles was stewing in his anger, his pride deeply wounded by Agamemnon's insult. He refused to rejoin the fight, even as his fellow Greeks were being slaughtered on the battlefield. The Trojans, emboldened by their success, pushed closer and closer to the Greek ships, threatening to burn them and leave the Greeks stranded on the shores of Troy. The stage was set for a truly epic showdown, with the fate of the war hanging in the balance. Would Achilles swallow his pride and return to the battle to save his comrades? Or would he let his anger consume him, even if it meant the destruction of the Greek army? Hector of Troy, prince and protector. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Hector, the Trojan prince who became a symbol of courage and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Unlike Achilles, who was driven by personal glory and a thirst for vengeance, Hector fought for something far greater than himself, his family, his city, and his people. Hector knew that the fate of Troy rested on his shoulders. He was a skilled warrior and a natural leader, inspiring his men to fight bravely against the invading Greeks. He was also a loving husband to his wife, Andromache, and a devoted father to their infant son, Astyanax. Hector's sense of duty and his love for his family made him a truly tragic figure. He knew that the war would ultimately claim his life, but he faced his destiny with unwavering courage, determined to protect his city and his loved ones for as long as he drew breath. Achilles versus Hector. The death of Patroclus, Achilles' beloved companion, ignited a firestorm of rage within the heartbroken hero. Consumed by grief and a thirst for vengeance, Achilles swore to make Hector pay for what he had done. He emerged from his tent, his eyes blazing with fury, and rejoined the battle with a vengeance. The Trojans, accustomed to facing the Greeks without their most fearsome warrior, were terrified by Achilles' return. The stage was set for the most anticipated confrontation of the Trojan War, a duel to the death between Achilles and Hector, the two greatest warriors of their age. The clash was nothing short of epic, a whirlwind of sword clashes, shield bashes, and furious cries that echoed across the battlefield. In the end, Achilles' superior skill and divine armor proved too much for Hector to overcome. The Trojan prince fell to the ground, defeated, and Achilles, his heart filled with rage and sorrow, dragged Hector's lifeless body behind his chariot around the walls of Troy. The death of Hector marked a turning point in the Trojan War. With their greatest champion slain, the Trojans' morale plummeted, and they retreated behind the safety of their impenetrable walls. However, the Greeks, led by the cunning Odysseus, devised a plan to finally breach the defenses of Troy. They constructed a giant wooden horse, ostensibly an offering to the goddess Athena, and presented it to the Trojans as a gesture of peace. The Trojans, weary of war and eager to believe that the Greeks had finally abandoned their siege, foolishly accepted the gift and wheeled the horse within their city walls. Little did they know that a group of Greek warriors, led by Odysseus himself, lay hidden within the belly of the horse. Under the cover of darkness, the Greeks emerged from their hiding place and opened the city gates to their comrades, who stormed Troy and unleashed a wave of destruction upon the unsuspecting city. The Trojan War, as depicted in the Iliad, may be a story, but its impact on Western literature, art, and culture is undeniable. For centuries, the heroes and villains of the Iliad have inspired countless works of art, from sculptures and paintings to plays, operas, and films. But what about the historical accuracy of the Iliad? Did the Trojan War actually happen, or is it just a figment of Homer's imagination? Well, the truth is probably somewhere in between. Archaeological evidence suggests that a city called Troy did exist in what is now modern-day Turkey, and that it was destroyed and rebuilt several times throughout its history. It's entirely possible that one of these destructions was the result of a conflict like the Trojan War, though the exact details are lost to the mists of time. Whether based on actual events or purely a product of imagination, the Iliad remains a timeless tale of love and loss, pride and revenge, and the enduring power of the human spirit.